the aggressive way, which was, you know,
Yeah.
scolding me, or the guilt trip way, you know, hoping that I'd feel guilty. And then after a year, I relented. I said, okay, I bargained with him. I said, I'm going to try, I'm going to go there, but what am I going to do? Well, he said, you can go to school, just try to live here, and then if you don't like it after your program, you can go home. I won't say anything anymore because you've already given in to what we want. I said, okay, deal. So I was crying every night when I got here. I would log onto the computer, read about my colleagues in the Philippines. They're doing very well. Of course, they advanced, right? Having more shows. And I was here, you know, doing nothing. I was going to school from 7 to 10 at night at UCLA Extension for print and broadcast journalism. But it was still, you know, I still missed my old life, my friends. And I always questioned God. I was like, why? Why did you let me do this? Why am I here? Blah, 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 blah. And then after I finished my course, I did 1 year of practical training. I could have gone home, but I had a practical training card, which meant that I could work around here anywhere I wanted, whatever. So I said, I'll just gain international experience, US experience, and then when I got back, it will be easier for me to work there. So I did that. I freelanced for TFC. And it was a hard job for Balitang America because we would go out, look for our own stories, and then do the permits, do everything, shoot, and then go back home, transcribe, and then write the script and voice and all for $100. And it was like 3 days of work. And you can't even submit a lot, even if you're hardworking, even if you get a lot of stories, because they only had like a 30-minute program at the time every week, I think. So I was like, Lord, why am I here? What am I doing here? Blah, 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 blah. And then it was through the networking from TFC that I met people who told me that LA18 was holding auditions. And then at that point, I had already made the decision to go back to the Philippines. So I said, anyway, when I go back, I'm still going to have to audition because I lost all my stuff there already. I might as well practice here and audition here. So I went and auditioned. And then I auditioned, it was October. By December, I was going to go home in March. By December, I called them. They said, oh, you know, don't call us, we'll call you. And I go, okay, that's it. And I was just waiting because I had a gig. Adidas Philippines contacted me to cover the NBA All-Stars in Houston at the time in February. So I said I was just going to finish that, and then I'm going to come back here. That was in Houston, in Texas. And then I'm going to come back here, pack my bags, and go back to the Philippines. That was the plan. A week before I left for Houston, I got the call from the producer of my boss, the one who eventually hired me at LA18. And then he called me in, and then he gave me an audition. He said, he took me down, 8th floor office, and took me down to the studio and said, talk, whatever you want to talk about. And then don't stop until I tell you to stop. So as soon as I started talking, I think 2 minutes into my whatever, like I was pretending like I was in front of the TV, he went up. Obviously, I talk a lot because he said, don't stop until he told me to stop, so I didn't stop. And then after...
And you've never stopped from that time on.
I didn't stop.
And until now, you're talking. And Kababayan LA is a very informative, content-rich program. Janelle, would you like to tell us, do you have any pre-show jitters?
Well, actually, I'm sorry, but just to relate it to my, like, what God did, this is what I realized. When I was interviewed by my boss after that audition, he said, you know, there were 2 other ladies before you that we considered. I was the 3rd choice. And at that time, they were already set to launch 2 weeks, 3 weeks after they found me. But and then he said, when you called in October, we were already training, at December, we were already training someone else. But they couldn't produce. One could just talk in front of the camera, but couldn't produce. One could just produce, but couldn't talk. One blah, 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 blah. And then I
Excuse me, Janelle,
realized
produce means
to conceptualize the show, put
conceptualize and
together
put
the
up.
segments,
Okay.
yeah. So, and that's when I realized the Lord was preparing me for that job. Even if I was making very, very little money from TFC, that was why He put me there first. Because He wanted me to be able to extend my network so that I can produce my show and then just be entrenched in what's happening in the community through TFC. And that's how I got the job. So I was like, Lord, wow, great, great preparation.
Praise the Lord. On television, you are really very sharp and in control of everything. You're the producer. But could you share any pre-show routine or jitters or any butterflies before the show?
I did have that when I was starting, maybe the first few weeks of the show. Especially, I have the tendency to talk faster when I'm nervous, because I talk fast, but I talk faster when I'm nervous. So I was talking faster. My parents were telling me, you know, you have to slow down. We can't understand what you're saying on TV. And I would admit now, there are still some guests who intimidate me. Like this coming week, I'm supposed to interview Mayor Villaraigosa on Monday. Not on the show, but we're going to his office. And then on Wednesday, I'm interviewing California State Controller John Chang. He's coming on the show. I get intimidated by people like that only because I don't know about U.S. politics and how the system is here, and that means I have to read up more and read up on the issues. So
In other words, you don't get nervous anymore.
Not
No.
anymore.
Okay.
Not as much. Not as much.
What pre-show routine do you do? Do you have any special routine that you have to do before you go in front of the camera?
Well,
Nothing, just
I'm a Catholic, so
Okay.
I would always make the sign of the cross. I would always
Okay.
say a little
You
prayer
pray.
before we start taping.
Okay.
But then just recently also, I have started renewing my relationship with the Lord. So as soon as I as soon as I get to my desk in the morning, I also pray. I pray in the car because I moved back to the South Bay, so it's quite a commute. I pray from the car to the office also. That's my alone time. So I
Okay.
listen to Hillsong
Okay.
or I listen to Joyce Meyer tapes on my commute to work.
Okay.
So that's what I do.
Okay. Who's your most interesting personality that you have interviewed in the show?
I always say that the most interesting, aside from you,
Oh, thank you. We're gonna give Janelle free dinner after that because of that.
is Loida Lewis. She's the Filipino billionaire. They own chips factories in Ireland, ice cream factories in Italy, convenience stores all over London and England. She's very, very rich woman, but she struck me as somebody that's very humble and very sincere. And during my interview with her, I got a lot of like little bits and pieces of wisdom. And what struck me the most was when she told me how she reflected on the meaning of love in Corinthians. And then how she was able to apply that in her relationship with her former husband because he passed away.
You get to speak with a lot of different personalities, people of different backgrounds. What life lessons do you glean from these interviews? The most important life lessons that keeps on, being impressed on you as you interview these people.
I think the most important life lesson, which is what I'm trying to practice now, is really, clinging to the Lord. Because, and even those who are not very spiritual or religious in the way they do their interviews, clinging to a higher being, somebody up there that's watching over us, making things happen for us, and just clinging to your faith.
And so, what I notice in the program is, even though it's very much into the current events, but I see that you look at life in a spiritual perspective.